Hi, everybody, and welcome to the August 2021 general meeting of the Council of Fort Lauderdale Civic Associations. Welcome back from your brief summer break from the council. We're thrilled to be convening again. Obviously, we've chosen to stay remote this month for obvious reasons. We have a packed agenda tonight, including the mayor joining us at some point. So we're going to try to get through things pretty quickly so we can get you out of here at a reasonable hour. With that, I'm going to turn things over to Second Vice President Jim Concannon to conduct the roll call.
Good evening, folks, and welcome. I'm going to start off with alphabetically, Bal Harbour. Please just say yes, you're here, acknowledged in some fashion. Bal Harbour, HOA?
Jim, I apologize. We just do roll call for the board. Everyone else is putting the name of their association in the chat. We're not going through every neighborhood.
All right. Well, then let's go back to the board. So we have Colleen.
Here.
Is here. Abby.
Here.
Marilyn Romano.
Present.
Frankie Lane.
Yeah.
Luis. Luis?
He is not here.
Luis is not here. Dennis Ulmer.
Here.
Melinda Bowker.
Here.
Oh, she's here. Sorry, Melinda.
No problem.
She's here. She's here. Sorry, folks, I was going to do the whole roll call, and I'm a little out of sorts here. Kathy Stubbs is here. I saw
Here.
Kathy.
I'm here.
Is here. Barbara Weinstein is not on the board. Brucey, hang on, folks. Who have I missed? I'm sorry.
Oh, I think Mary Peliquin has an excused absence.
Mary Peliquin is out, right? She's on vacation. She would do a very good job at this, better than I, apparently.
Yeah, Mike Ledbetter will be joining late. And then I believe the only other board member missing is Barbara McGill, and I believe she may also be out on vacation.
I mean, yes, right.
Okay.
All right, so that concludes the roll call for the board.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jim. Appreciate it. So general membership updates. Very quickly, I have 3 updates for you. Number 1, you should have all received this by email. It may be more relevant for the neighborhoods around the Searstown area, but this is an open meeting from FDOT for tomorrow night to talk about the planned improvements around that whole corridor on Sunrise and the surrounding area. So if you have not received it and you are interested, we will put this link in the chat for those that would like to sit in and hear the latest on the updates, because that will certainly impact traffic and but I believe it's a very positive set of improvements. The next general update very quickly is the fabulous Neighbor Leadership Academy is now hosting their 9th class, and it begins on October 13th and ends November 10th. They are planning to go back to in-person at George English. There is a registration link to apply, and the deadline is August 29th. The wonderful Jessica Wilkes from Neighbor Support is here to answer any questions. If you could put those questions in the chat. In the meantime, we will provide this link in the chat as well. So please let your neighbors know, your fellow board members from your HOAs about this wonderful program where you can learn all about the different city departments and how the government works. And it's a great leadership building exercise and program. The only other update I have is about one-stop shop. So there's been a lot of conversation about protecting the green space in one-stop shop. And I know we have several folks from Flagler Village here. We understand that there are also concerns about the comprehensive agreement. This is not on the agenda for tonight. We have given guidance to Flagler Village to host a charrette with HOA presidents if they would like, because one-stop shop could be its own conversation for the next hour, hour and a half. So with that, if you're interested, please contact Leanne. Leanne is the president of Flagler Village, and I'm sure she can share a lot of information about that. So with that, I'm going to pivot to the introduction of guests. Unless the mayor is joined, if you guys could just let me know if Dean has come on so we can give him the floor. We're going to pivot the agenda and allow Dr. Rader to go first. We have 4 presenters tonight plus Dennis. I count Dennis as our board member, but I guess there are 5 presenters tonight. We always have the city provide updates, and normally that's Chris Lagerblum. He's on vacation. We are privileged to have Assistant City Manager Tarlisha Smith with us tonight, joined by building official John Travers, especially in light of the Surfside tragedy. I think building safety is an important topic for all of us. But before they go, we're going to have Dr. Rader speak. For obvious reasons, we need to know, we need to hear, we need to understand what we're facing with regard to COVID. We also have Scott Dudley. He's the executive director for the Florida League of Mayors. It's a wonderful presentation on legislative priorities that we should all be mindful of and ways that we can get involved.
I need a little help.
If we could just,
Yeah.
if we could mute phones that are making noise, that would be great. And if I could just remind folks to keep on mute if you're not speaking. Then we have members of FDOT and TAM and some of the contracted engineering service providers giving us an update on the Heck Tunnel project. And then lastly, Dennis is going to give us an update on a national neighborhood conference that he attended. So that's our agenda for this evening. So I'm now going to turn the floor over to our local physician that we refer to as our local Dr. Fauci, Dr. JJ Rader. We are very, very happy that you are here with us tonight. Once again, I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
Hi, thank you for having me again. Unfortunately, we're in a situation that in some aspects could have been predicted. You know, when we had the meeting 2 months ago and we were talking about discontinuing this, I was like, well, let's just reserve that for right now, because all we know about pandemics really revolves around, well, not all, but important stuff around the 1918 pandemic, flu pandemic. We know that the second year of that pandemic was worse than the first year. Guess what? We're now in the second year of this COVID pandemic. So the fact that we're seeing what we're seeing is not completely unexpected, at least not in my book. Kind of surprised me why national leaders are being surprised by what's going on, but I'm not. We are talking about an immunization rate at around 50% overall. In the elderly population, you're looking at an immunization rate that is well over 90%, which is wonderful. But part of what we're seeing right now is that the mask mandates have been lifted. For people who are immunized, that is not an immediate concern, but many people are not being very forthcoming for that. And they think that the government is in to take away some of their rights, but in reality, they're there to try to protect them. And if you're not immunized and you're running around without the mask, thank you for your business, because I will be seeing you sooner or later. As far as those that are immunized, we are seeing an uptick of disease in immunized people. Now, that disease also is not unexpected. If you look back at the original studies, and even on some of my comments I made almost a year ago, the vaccines did not look at prevention of disease. It prevented severe symptomatic disease. That means that some people are getting asymptomatic or minimally symptomatic disease at this point in time is not unexpected. But the concern is now with Delta that you can see a 1,000-fold increase in the viral load in immunized people. That means that immunized people now are capable of transmitting disease, even though they may be asymptomatic. Hence, the masking mandates that you see in some other states, in my opinion, is not completely inappropriate, because we do know that vaccinated people can get infected. Some vaccinated people will get sick. I saw the numbers recently from Jackson, where they had close to 400 people admitted across their facilities with COVID. About 40 of those were immunized people. And of those 40 some, 30 some were people status post-transplant, meaning on immunosuppressive therapy. So immunocompetent individuals with vaccines make up a very, very small minority of patients admitted to the hospital. But I think those numbers will increase over time. Worldwide, we're only looking at about a 10% immunization rate. Now, we say, well, why is that important? Well, for example, the Delta variant that we're dealing with right now actually originated in India. There can be other variants like Lambda right now that may even be more virulent than Delta that is originating in Peru. Now, if you have areas where the vaccines are less prominent, you're going to have more transmission, hence more likelihood of developing variants. And the more variants you develop, the more likely you're going to have a variant that will cause more severe disease in immunized and non-immunized people alike. So we're not out of this yet. For those who ask about getting a booster shot, that is a very common question. At this point in time, none of the recommendations are indicating a booster shot. Likelihood is that if you will get a booster, it may be a reformulated vaccine, not the current iteration of the vaccine, just like you have with the flu shot, where every year you need to get a different vaccine for the flu. I think eventually we'll be facing the same thing with a repurposed, a redesigned COVID vaccine, probably is on the horizon in the next few months. I think things are going to get markedly worse before they get better. Why? Because right now in South Florida, we're in about week 2 of the flare-up, and we know that flare-ups usually last anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks before they peak. So we have not seen peak mortality yet. We have not even seen peak ICU admission yet. So the worst is still ahead of us. Florida has requested, as of a few days ago, 300 ventilators out of the federal strategic reserve. That probably means that they're running out of them. ICU beds are currently at a premium. Many hospitals, including my own, have converted auditoriums into makeshift beds because they're expecting dramatic increase in hospital admissions. So that is it for right now.
So, Dr. Rader, thank you very much. I have 3 questions. One, is it true that Broward is leading the country in hospitalizations for COVID? I read that somewhere recently. Number 2.
Let's take them one at a time, because otherwise I'll forget. I'm in vacation mode. So to answer that question, I don't know if it's Broward specifically, but South Florida is definitely leading the country in the number of admissions. Austin actually is in pretty bad shape as well, Austin, Texas, where they had to fly people out 2 and 3 hours away because they were out of ICU beds. But I read somewhere that they were like less than 10 ICU beds available. I don't remember where I was reading that, but yeah, ICU beds are coming at a premium again. And even just non-ICU beds. It's going to become more challenging as time goes on. And what I do know is that the total number of admissions now is higher than what we had a year ago when this pandemic started.
Okay. The big debate about schools and the mask mandate, children under 12 being vaccinated, good or bad idea? How soon do you think that will be something that the CDC recommends?
I'm waiting for that impatiently. My son is less than 12. He's 11 and 3/4, trying to get him vaccinated, tried multiple pharmacies. They said no. Currently, Pfizer has ongoing studies from 5 to 12 years old. They said they were going to go for emergency use authorization on that vaccine. Hasn't happened yet. I think it's imminent, but I don't know how imminent. But it doesn't matter. Even if it started next week, you know, you get your first shot, and between the first shot and fully being immunized, it's 5 weeks. School is starting next week. So it may be throwing oil on a fire, and by the time you can get the fire department there, it has already burned out of control. So it's a challenge. It's a very, very big challenge.
And my last question, you mentioned this, right? We're not at the peak yet, and then we have 4 to 6 weeks out from that. I know this is all very driven by modeling, but in terms of timeline, how long do you expect this outbreak to occur, given what you know, which is there are people that will not get vaccinated. We don't have kids fully vaxxed and they're back in school. Are we looking at mid-October, November? When do you think it's going to be better again? Any sense about that?
Okay, so this August, if you go back, I was saying, wait for August, I think we're gonna have another outbreak. I mean, I said this months ago, it's not surprising, it's not unexpected. Now, to answer this particular question, it's very, very hard to answer. Eventually, something burns itself out. And what I mean by that is, every fire needs a source to burn. In COVID, what you're looking at are people that are susceptible to the virus. Well, eventually people are going to be vaccinated or having caught COVID. So eventually this is going to burn itself out. The question is how long? But that is not even the more important question. The more important question is we have Delta, we have Lambda. You know, there is a lot left to the Greek alphabet to follow. And at some point, the vaccine is going to have limited impact on those who are vaccinated and unvaccinated alike. And then we may be back exactly the way we were in September of, December of 2019, when this first started happening, where we really have very, very limited tools. So I think that is my biggest concern, is what is going to win the race? Is a vaccination and natural protection, or is the virus going to win? And the jury is still out on that.
Okay. And Nancy has a question, Nancy Messing. What timeline do you see for booster shots? Any thought about that?
Booster shots, honestly, I think it would not be unreasonable to start looking at that now. The reason I say this is when we look at people who are vaccinated, who have come down with COVID, minimally symptomatic or asymptomatic disease, we do know that there is a much higher incidence in people that got vaccinated in January versus people that got vaccinated in April, May, June. So we know that there is a component there of waning immunity. So we do know that part because the vaccine has not been reformulated. So the only way that there's going to be more of those people versus people that have been more recently vaccinated is simply because we have a waning immunity. We also know that some people develop much lower titers to the vaccine than what would be anticipated, and those titers also come down. So once again, I know that Pfizer has been working on a booster, and not the current vaccine, but a reformulated vaccine. When that's going to become available is unclear, because those both Pfizer and Moderna are currently going for full authorization on their vaccine and no longer emergency use authorization. So there are multiple things going concurrently, and the trials are currently ongoing on the booster shot.
Fantastic. And last question for you, Dr. Rader. Other than I hope you will join us again next month, most likely remotely. The advice for someone that is vaccinated who contracts COVID again, the advice is depending on the symptoms, right? You as necessary. General guidance for those that are vaxxed that also contract the disease or the virus.
So in my practice, and now I'm going to be talking about my practice, people who contract COVID, vaccinated or not, I treat them identically. What I mean by that is there is always a potential of people becoming long haulers, even if they are vaccinated. The potential, we don't know why, because this is a new thing where you're seeing more and more vaccinated people come down with COVID. So we don't know what's going to happen to those people in 6 months from now. My assumption is that there may be some concern there, so I treat them all alike. If they are symptomatic, I would try, well, number one, I use the protocol that I use on all my patients. I know it's a big topic for debate and argument and back and forth, so I'm not going to bring this up again in this meeting, but I treat them with my protocol. On top of that, if they qualify for monoclonal antibodies, I would do that therapy as well. If they are too symptomatic, they would go on systemic steroids, which is not really an argument. If their D-dimer, which is a marker of blood clots, is elevated, they end up on blood thinners. If they are significantly hypoxic and need to go to the hospital, they would get started on the remdesivir, which can only be administered in the hospital. So the bottom line is there is an entire assortment, an entire cocktail of options that can be administered. And if people are in that situation, I would recommend seeking medical advice. I mean, I'm on vacation, but my team is still in the office right now treating people that come in with COVID. Why? Because I just could not shut that down. There are just too many people coming in with COVID.
Right. Wonderful. Well, thank you for taking time out of your vacation, Dr. Rader. Really appreciate your guidance and insight and wisdom as always. We'll see you next month. Enjoy the rest of your time and please stay safe.
Thank you. Same to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we are joined by our mayor, and I did not ask Dean when he wanted to speak during the meeting, but I'm always assuming that he gets the floor when he arrives. So Dean, would you like to say a few words, or do you want to wait until we get to the tunnel project to speak? Up to you.
Hi, Colleen. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi.
Okay. So yeah, thank you. Actually, I heard that one of the agenda items tonight was regarding the tunnel. So I just thought it would be appropriate if I listened in to see, who was going to be giving opinions about it, because no one. Oh, sorry, my dogs. No one was really listening. No one was really listening. Hey. No one was listed as a speaker, so I wanted to just hear, because I want to educate myself. So, but I appreciate the offer to speak, and if something comes up that perhaps my opinion is needed or some insight regarding the process is needed, I'd be happy to talk at that point.
Fantastic. Well, we are honored to have you here. So
Thank you.
we will go back to our agenda, and we next up have general city updates. So Mayor, this may be something you want to weigh in on. Joining us on behalf of Chris is Assistant City Manager Tarlisha, and also in the background as needed is Greg Chavarria, and we're also joined by Building Inspector Official John Travers, and this is going to be a general update on city events, activities, initiatives, and also specifically kind of next steps on, given or in the wake of Surfside, how are we ensuring building safety, especially for our high-rise condos along the beach and elsewhere. So with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to you, Tarlisha. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Good evening. I normally don't speak if my mayor's here because he has more information than me always. We also thought that the principal portion of the conversation this evening was going to be the concerns because of the number of high rises in the city of Fort Lauderdale was centered around John Travers' discussion with the group, because there have been so many concerns that have been put forward. As far as the community events or community information, I know that Dr. Rader covered quite a bit with COVID. That is another sticking point and hot topic in the city right now for us, from a standpoint as far as the citizens, as well as the education component, to see what Broward School Board is doing, but we don't speak for Broward jurisdiction as it relates to the school board. So, and if the mayor would like to comment on anything that the city is doing as far as COVID is concerned, I don't think we're doing anything other than following the CDC guidelines right now, Mayor, with any action pending from the city commission at this time. We're just following the guidelines at this point.
So, as you know, the state government, the governor and the legislature has taken certain initiatives to kind of tie our hands as to what we can and cannot do in connection with trying to deal with the pandemic, and as it's become really rampant in our communities. We've actually recently, in the last couple of days in particular, reached out to the faith community, and a number of the churches that I have been talking to over the last few years, I've reached out to their pastors, in particularly the fundamentalist community, and those communities which are showing a really, really low vaccination rate. In response to my request, these pastors have been eagerly interested in helping out. I've talked to the folks at Coral Ridge Presbyterian Church, Calvary. A number of pastors have stepped forward and said, indeed, they're going to set up, pop-up vaccination sites at their churches, and really, make an extra effort to try to get their parishioners to sign up for the vaccine. So we don't do a lot of publicity about this, but I think the community should know that we are making a special effort to the underutilized communities to try to get that vaccine in, throughout our population. So that's the latest as far as that's concerned. We are not instituting a mandatory mask ordinance with regard to our public buildings, but as far as my office is concerned, we have a policy now that unless you're vaccinated or unless you can show a negative COVID test within the previous 48 hours, I will not be able to meet with you. All my meetings would have to be by telephone, a telephone conference call. We need to try to keep ourselves safe and at the same time try to encourage others to get vaccinated. So that's our policy right now.
That's wonderful. So, Alicia, should we turn it over to Mr. Travers?
Yes, we did have a question if there was a city requiring vaccines for our employees. No, there is no plan to do that right now because we can't ask and demand an answer legally pursuant to our city attorney's direction under current law that we cannot allow our employees, supervisors to ask for vaccination cards. And well, we can ask, but we can't demand proof at this point. So there's no mandatory vaccine at this point for our employees.
Interesting. Facebook, United Airlines, Tyson Food have all issued mandates for the vaccine as of today. So
yes, most of private industry has done that. Right now, from a government standpoint, we haven't been able to enforce that based on the laws that are currently on the books. We've been adjusting the last week. So
let me chime in a little bit here. So as you know, the federal, a recent federal court ruling came down in connection with Norwegian cruise lines. And that court ruled in favor of the Norwegian cruise lines, saying that they could enforce a vaccine requirement. So we're looking into seeing whether or not that can be interpreted to be applied to other areas, including government, since it is a federal court and it does supersede state enforcement powers. So there's more to be said about this. This is the end. We'll have to see how far the state government looks to appeal that ruling. But right now there's quite a few people discussing the applicability of that ruling to industries and businesses and organizations outside of the cruise industry. I just wanted to bring that up as well.
excellent point. Tricia is asking, and I think I know the answer to this, right? The governor has his executive orders. Is the city planning to go back to Zoom or remote for advisory councils or other meetings? I think you kind of just explained that, Dean. I mean, there's in person, but there's caveats. Correct.
Everything's still in person. Hey, just get the vaccine. We're all safe if people can do that. And it's a simple measure. Unless you're allergic to it, we fully understand that. We will make accommodations for people like that. But it's a smart thing to do. And this should not have become a political issue. I went to pick up some shoes today that I had repaired over here off the Federal Highway. And the fellow who owns the shoes place, been there for a zillion years. they have a sign on the outside of their door say, please wear a mask when you enter. And he told me that this morning, some woman opened the door and started screaming at him, saying he can't do that and he should be ashamed of himself and she's never coming back again. This is just a mask. So it's really gotten out of hand. I understand the school board has now voted 8-1 to require masks. So they're going toe to toe with the governor. So we'll see how that ends up. But, let's not do what the governor of Texas is talking about doing, closing down a whole school system that requires masks just to show who's in charge there. Imagine denying kids their education because of an issue over masks. So anyway, that's where we are today.
And there is one other question that I've gotten, which is employees that test positive on city staff. The policy or the process is folks around them get quarantined. If you've been around somebody, you get tested. Have you experienced anything recently with positive city staff that you could share?
Tarlisha, can you answer that?
Yes, I can, Mayor. Actually, last week, we get COVID statistics on a weekly basis from our HR department. Jerome Post is our deputy director, and he spearheads that program where we monitor that. And with last week, we had a total of 34, and this week we had an uptick. We are up to 71, and that's not including the total quarantined at the moment. Some of the employees who actually tested positive were actually fully vaccinated, but again, it varies from person to person. And as Dr. Rader just said, that is not a guarantee. It just really helps to ease the severe symptoms in most cases. So that's kind of where statistically where we are with the city right now, just shy of 75 employees.
Okay, so a pretty significant number. All right, so fantastic updates on that side of the house. Are we going to provide Mr. Travers the floor a bit to talk about building safety separately, or just to answer questions?
He's here to, I think he had a brief presentation or a brief discussion that he'd like to share based on the requests that were made previously in the last meeting, or the, I guess, inquiries that the city's received in the recent past. So he's prepared to speak on that, and he's free to answer questions, but he may be a little bit limited in how far he can go, but he will answer the questions as they're presented and advise accordingly.
Okay, so just to lay the background for this, the city, as always, is very responsive to events and important priorities. And one of those that we all know and heard about here and nationally was the Surfside tragedy. And there was an official response from the city that talked about inspections of buildings that were more than 40 years old, and that a detailed review of all buildings of 40 years or older. None have been found to be in violation of their inspections. So I think there's a lot more detail here. And the point of having Mr. Travers here is to kind of talk about where do we go from here? Are there more detailed inspections planned? Are we understanding what the variables are that caused the collapse in Miami-Dade? How do we ensure our safety for our buildings here in Fort Lauderdale? So with that, Mr. Travers, I can make you a co-presenter so you can share slides. You may already be able to as a panelist, if you would like.
All right, thank you very much, Colleen. Just taking an audio check to make sure everyone can hear me clearly.
We can hear you.
Okay, and I will try to share my screen. And hopefully everybody should be seeing the slide presentation. It's only about 12, 13 slides, only takes about maybe 5-7 minutes. And then after that, I'll be available for some Q&A if you'd like. Introducing myself, I'm John Travers. I'm the building official for the city of Fort Lauderdale. I have been the building official since November of 2014. Prior to that, I served with the city of Hialeah for 21 years And then in between that post and this one, I briefly served as the building official in Monroe County, the Florida Keys. So what everybody needs to know is that we do have a building safety inspection program. Miami-Dade County and Broward County incorporated a program that requires third-party inspections by architects or engineers whenever a building reaches its 40th anniversary of its certificate of occupancy. And then there are subsequent inspection reports that are required every 10 years thereafter. In Broward County, it's actually part of our Broward edition of the Florida Building Code, and it's entitled the Building Safety Inspection Program. Miami-Dade County has the same program, and they label it as the 40-year Building Recertification Program. So most likely in the media, you've heard that term, recertification program. That's the title of the Miami-Dade program. Both of these programs look at the structural integrity and the electrical systems of any qualifying building. And they have to have inspections performed to determine if there are any deficiencies or any mitigation that is necessary. So the dates for the notification come from the Broward County Properties Appraiser's Office, and that's based on the CO date of record. A countywide list is submitted to the Broward County Board of Rules and Appeals, and the BORA staff divides that into a spreadsheet for each of the 31 municipalities throughout Broward County. They then distribute that list to each municipality in June, identifying all of the buildings that are approaching the 40-year anniversary or those that are approaching the 10-year intervals thereafter. Once the list reaches the municipality, then the municipality has to eliminate all of the structures that don't have to participate in the program. And some examples of buildings that do not have to participate in the program are federal and state buildings, schools that are under the jurisdiction of the Broward County School Board, buildings that are constructed on Indian reservation territories, 1- and 2-family homes, and minor structures that are 3,500 square feet or less. Just an interesting note here, in some of the meetings that I've been, the one section of buildings that are exempted, the buildings under the jurisdiction of the Broward County School Board, somebody on a committee that I serve on actually asked, why are school board buildings exempt from this program? And we don't have an answer for that, but I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. So then the municipality notifies the principal owner or the management company of the building of the requirement to hire a qualified architect or an engineer to perform this safety inspection. The owner has 90 days to present the results of that inspection to the municipality, and then they have 180 days to present a mitigation process if there are deficiencies noted. One of the biggest challenges that we have is finding out who the current owner or the current association manager of some of our high rises are. They do have a tendency to change hands often, and sometimes the entire association is voted out and a new association committee is voted in. So this is kind of a constant challenge for us to make sure we're notifying the right people. I do want to make a point about these safety inspection reports. They are reviewed by the building official, myself, or one of my designated representatives. We don't approve the report. We only review them, and they're filed in our system. If there are corrections that are noted in the report, then we maintain that there have to be permits obtained for the corrective actions. And we also move to a code enforcement case whenever these actions aren't performed within the proper amount of allotted time. There is the opportunity for an extension to be granted to the permits once they're pulled, as long as the building official, myself, receives proper notification that an extension is necessary. So if I use the city of Fort Lauderdale as an example, we get about 300 to 350 addresses each June from the Board of Rules and Appeals. We then have to eliminate all of those buildings that don't have to participate in the program, and I did mention those in an earlier slide. And we notify the owners or the managers of the requirement to hire a competent architect or engineer to perform those inspections. This is an ongoing process that goes on all year long after that June notification. And quite often we have to open a code enforcement case whenever owners don't move forward with the mandates of the program. They either don't hire an architect or an engineer to perform, or else if there are corrections that need to be done, they're slow to move towards those corrections, particularly when there's special assessments that need to get assigned to all of the unit owners. So we move that as a code enforcement case before a special magistrate, just like we would with other code enforcement cases that we prepare. Of course, the collapse of the Champlain Tower has suddenly brought all aspects of the building safety program into the spotlight. And I do want to make a point to everybody here that's listening in tonight. In the state of Florida, only Miami-Dade County and Broward County even participate in such a program. Nowhere else is there a program like this in place. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a member of the Broward County Board of Rules and Appeals Structural Subcommittee, and we've already had discussions and meetings on possible changes to the current program. But right now we feel the best approach is that we need to let the experts investigate this collapse to be able to determine a cause and to come up with that kind of a report from the investigation before we move forward with making drastic changes to the program if necessary. By the way, we are working in collaboration with Miami-Dade County so that whatever changes do come about, both counties are going to try and build those changes into the program together. So we've been participating in this building safety inspection program since 2006 when it was first initiated here in Broward County. And in Miami-Dade County, it came about in the mid-70s. So they have actually had their program in place a little bit longer than we have up here in Broward County. Obviously, the building collapses raised the awareness of building integrity throughout the nation. And we're going to continue to keep public safety and efficient public service as the keystones of our performance. So that's kind of the prepared presentation that I have for everybody. And again, I thank you, Colleen, and all of those who are on the call tonight for inviting me to speak about this. And at this time, I'll go ahead and stop sharing, and I'll turn it back to you, Colleen, so that you can continue with any Q&A that might be available.
Thank you so much. We actually do have two questions from Marilyn. Marilyn, if you want to come off mute and ask those questions directly, and then we'll take other questions from Mr. Travers following Marilyn.
Hi, John, how you doing?
I'm
Two
fine.
questions. One, how many open case courses are, how many open cases of non-compliance are there currently before the magistrate for buildings that have not complied or done their, either done their report or done the repairs that are necessary? Do you know that number?
Yeah. First of all, Marilyn, can you say code cases fast 3 times?
No.
So we always have a number of code cases that are open, but I want to make a point to everybody that's listening in. A lot of times these cases are not for eminent life safety issues in a building. They often deal with minor, what we would call cosmetic wear and tear issues that just need to be looked into. So at any given time, we may have somewhere on the order of 12 to 15 cases that are actually active before the special magistrate. And a lot of times those cases are ongoing cases that have been around a while. And just to give you an example, if we had a high rise that's got, say, 150 units in it, and they have to do repairs on all of the railings on the balconies, it's not realistic to expect that we're going to be able to get a report back from the original engineer that filed the safety inspection report that all of those repairs might have been done within 180 days. So I do have the authority to allow for extensions as long as I see that there is good progress that's being made. So to circle back on your question, Generally, we have somewhere between a dozen to 15 cases that are in active status. Right now, none of those cases are involving what we would call imminent life-threatening issues. There's just minor things that have been reported. And keep in mind that this report that's submitted not only looks at the building integrity of the structure, but it also looks at the electrical system. So quite often, some of the cases that go before the special magistrate deal with electrical issues that need to be taken care of.
Well, that's pretty good for a city of our size. And my last question is, are municipal buildings exempt from these requirements?
So the answer is maybe, and I say maybe because if they are state or federal buildings, yes. But there's nothing in the provisions of the rules in Chapter 1 of the Florida Building Code that exempts a city or a county building from the program.
And so do we do our 40-year inspections on our city buildings per the regulations?
Yes, they are required to participate in the program if they fall within the guidelines of the buildings that are in the program. And the reason I say that is that the city does have some structures that are less than 3,500 square feet. And so therefore they are exempt from the program. We have some buildings in our park system that are small maintenance buildings or storage buildings, things of that nature that don't have to participate in the program.
Okay, but the larger buildings, like say the city garages and things like that, when they hit their 40 years, they get their inspections.
Yes, ma'am, they do.
Thank you very much, sir. No
You're
more
welcome.
questions.
I actually have a question. So Broward County, I believe it was the inaugural meeting of what's called the Condominium Structural Issues Committee, met yesterday at 10 a.m. and they reviewed documents. They looked at existing laws and regulations, enforcement of the 40-year recertification, the effects of sea level rise on condominiums, and I think it was more a conversation, right? Insurance was part of it, et cetera. John, did you mention that you are working in, I know you said you were working closely with Miami-Dade, but are you talking with the county as well? Because you did mention the school district building. Is this something that you are working in partnership with the county on? Is that something that we could come together on more closely, just in terms of, so that to Marilyn's point, right? There's residential buildings, there's city-owned municipal buildings, and then there's county-owned buildings.
So yes, Colleen, to answer your question, first of all, I tuned in on that meeting that was held at Broward County yesterday. And one of the members that sat on the dais of that meeting is the chairman of the Broward County Board of Rules and Appeals, and that's Mr. Dan Lavrich. Dan Lavrich also heads the structural subcommittee that I sit on. So even though I work for the city of Fort Lauderdale, I'm actively involved in a lot of things at the county level. And one of those things is the structural subcommittee to the Board of Rules and Appeals. I also sit on two other committees here in Broward County, one of them having to deal with pools and the other one having to deal with a special system that we have in our high rises to help enhance the radio signal of first responders, and that's called the Bi-Directional Amplification Committee. But these are just some of the things that I'm involved in. You can't just serve the city that you're working for. You have to be involved at a county and sometimes even at a state level in order to keep up with everything.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you very much. I think it's clear that we all have heightened awareness and attention to potential issues, and especially red flag issues as they arise. So we hope that we are on top of those and don't have anything nearly what occurred in Miami-Dade. So anyone else from a high-rise building along the Galt or elsewhere that has any questions for Mr. Travers before we allow him to step aside?
And if I could, Colleen, I'd just like to make one final statement, and that is that we've been designing and building structures for hundreds of years. And many of those structures are still in good, safe condition. They're occupied. We don't want to jump to a conclusion here. There are going to wind up being a lot of factors that probably caused the collapse of the Champlain Tower in Surfside. And so we want to give the investigators the opportunity to do a full and comprehensive report. And we need to understand that we've got structures all over the state that have been in use and occupied for decades and decades. And as long as there's an association or a group that is maintaining the integrity of that building on an ongoing basis and not ignoring the signs, one of the things that Dan Laveridge likes to talk about, and that's the chairman of the Board of Rules and Appeals, he says, buildings will talk to you and you have to listen to them. And if we have condominium associations that are paying attention to the signs that their buildings are giving to them, and they're fixing those things all along the way, then we don't come upon this kind of a situation probably, okay? Thank you very much for inviting me tonight.
Thank you, John, Mr. Travers, Tarlisha, and Greg as well for your time tonight. If we could just thank our presenters for that item and their coverage tonight. We really appreciate you.
Thank you, Colleen. Can I just make one last announcement?
Of course.
In due course, I believe, and I want to thank quite a few of the people who are on this call. We finally selected our police chief, and the swearing-in ceremony is on the 24th of this month. So if anyone would like to save the date, invitations or information will be going out shortly from our strategic communications department. And we welcome the community to come out and celebrate that milestone for us, because we know that we've been looking for a chief for quite a bit. But we want to make sure that the community is aware that we have selected a new police chief, and he will begin working with the city on the 16th, but we will have the celebration of that and swearing in on the 24th of this month. And we will send the information out to make sure that everybody gets it.
Fantastic. That's great. I'm sure a lot of people would like to know and participate and attend that swearing in. And also kudos to the Strategic Communications Department and the new YouTube FTL weekly news updates. I've been really enjoying those. So Dr. Beasley Pittman is asking, what time is the swearing in, Tarlisha?
It's at noon. We may have a change of location that's going to be solidified in the next couple of days. So I don't want to pitch the location just yet, but we'll make sure that the information is pushed out through your email list as well as through our neighbor support division.
Okay, terrific.
All right, thank you. It's at noon.
So we did have Scott, and Scott, I'm going to beg forgiveness, right? We've moved the agenda around a little bit tonight. I would like, on behalf of the mayor's time, to pull up the tunnel project as the next presentation. I'm not giving Karen or Shelby or our FDOT team members a lot of notice on that, but could we switch the agenda and talk Heck Tunnel next? And maybe it's HEK, sorry. And Scott, would you be okay if we deferred you till after that? Would that be all right with you?
Yeah, that's fine. Whatever works for you.
Okay.
Yep, we're good with that, Colleen.
All right, fantastic. So Karen, if I could turn the floor over to you to introduce the presentation, the team members, they're gonna talk about it and go through the presentation. And I believe you can share your screen as a panelist.
Certainly. Hello, everyone. Good night. It's good to see faces again. I haven't been to one of your meetings in quite a while. So tonight we're happy to be here to talk about the Henry Kinney Tunnel project that's coming up. It is going to start construction in September, so less than a month now, and it's going to impact us for the next 2 years, and it will impact all of us. So we really wanted to have DOT come out directly to you to give this presentation first about what's going to happen, and then they'll also talk about how there'll be several other community meetings, including next week, virtual and in person, for folks who aren't at this meeting, and you can share with your association memberships. And I know I just got an email while we were on this meeting that our strategic communications just blasted out all the meeting notices through Nextdoor and their different media channels. So I'll hand it over to Daniela. I think if you want to start with the intro, I'm not sure on your team who's going to take that on. to do the presentation.
Yes, so good evening, everyone. My name is Daniela Silva. I am the Community Outreach Specialist and the project spokesperson for the tunnel project. Give me 1 second. Let me just put the presentation on the screen. And if everybody can just confirm that it is on the screen.
Yes, we can see it.
Perfect. Oh, starting early. Okay, here we go. As I mentioned, I am the Community Outreach Specialist for the Henry Kinney Tunnel Improvements and Pedestrian Plaza project. With me tonight, I do have the construction project team, so I'll begin with introductions. On behalf of FDOT, we have Construction Project Manager Heidi Cuevas. Representing the department and administering the contract, we have BCC Engineering, Senior Project Engineer Martin Ryan, Project Administrator Eric Pineras, Mechanical Project Administrator Andre Thomas, and representing the contractor, lead engineering contractors, we have Project Manager Frank Serrano. Myself, I am a consultant to the department, and I am with the Coordino Group. So before I begin, I'd like to say a massive thank you to Karen and Shelby for coordinating our attendance tonight and being able to give this presentation to the Civic Association. We know that this project will be in your front door, and it will be impacting. So we do want to establish that communication early on, and you can put faces to the names that you'll be hearing in regards to this specific project. So thank you, everyone, and I'll go ahead and begin the presentation. Project overview. So the purpose of the project is to rehabilitate the tunnel and build a pedestrian plaza. The total length of the project is 3.14 miles. The contract has been awarded to lead engineering contractors, and we are set to begin construction on Tuesday, September 7th of 2021. Total estimated contract cost is $28.4 million. 12 million of those funds were allocated from the city of Fort Lauderdale. Contract time, we have 701 calendar days. This does not include weather and holidays. FDOT has included project incentives so that the contractor does complete the project on time, which would lead us to an estimated completion of late 2023. Project limits. So the project limit will extend along US 1 from I-595 to north of Broward Boulevard. As you can see on the screen, we'll be mainly focusing on the tunnel portion. So part of the scope of this project will be milling and resurfacing, which is limited on US 1 from Rio Vista Boulevard to south of the tunnel. We will also be installing intelligent transportation systems along US 1 from I-595 to Broward Boulevard. And these ITS components will include the installation of a new ITS fiber optic cable, CCTV cameras to provide real-time traffic monitoring and incident detection, arterial dynamic messaging signs. This will provide motorists with traveler information and relevant tunnel information, as well as including sensors to support incident detection and provide traffic data. We will also be rehabilitating the structural, mechanical, electrical, architectural, and life safety components of the tunnel. These life safety components will include installing fire evacuation exit signage, replacing lighting inside of the tunnel, updating automatic and manual fire detection alarm systems, replacing and upgrading fire department connections, providing emergency communication and notification systems, and updating the ventilation system within the tunnel along the north and the south end. So as well as within the tunnel, we will be extending the tunnel top to the north of Los Olas Boulevard, 117 feet, and this will accommodate a pedestrian plaza, which will include new fountains, brick pavers, seating facilities, artificial turf, and landscape installation. Lastly, we will also be reconstructing the intersection of Los Olas Boulevard at Southeast 6th Avenue. Traffic impacts for this project. In order to minimize impacts to the traveling public, work will occur in phases, which we will go over later on. Traffic within the tunnel will be shifted to one side of the tunnel and one lane in each direction will be maintained. Lane closures and full closures of the Henry Kinney Tunnel are permitted, as well as Los Olas Boulevard are permitted, and detours of US 1 will be implemented on an as-needed basis. These full closures of Los Olas Boulevard and the tunnel will not occur at the same time, and they will not be concurrent. Pedestrian access will be maintained throughout construction, and business access will be maintained at all times. So prior to any full closures, the project team will ensure that advance notification is provided to the public, and we'll make sure to do that well in advance. Now I'd like to hand off the slide regarding maintenance of traffic to our project administrator, Eric Pineras.
Thank you, Daniela, for the introduction. Hello, everybody. My name is Eric Pineras. I'll be the PA project administrator for the project. I'll be discussing the MOT phases that are going to take place and how traffic will move through the work zone. Well, to begin, on US 1, as you see in red, we will have the outside lanes of the tunnel closed. The outside lanes of the tunnel will need to be closed in order to facilitate demolition of the exterior walls, as well as the construction of the end vents for later beam placement. We will maintain one lane open in each direction. For Los Olas Boulevard, we will be closing the westbound lanes, and traffic will be shifted to the eastbound lanes with one lane open in each direction as well, as you can see in blue and green. This phase will remain in place until phase 3. With phase 2, US 1, the opposite will take place, and the inside lanes of the tunnel will be closed. This will facilitate construction of the intermediate vent for the beam placement at the beginning of phase 3. Los Olas configuration will remain in the same configuration as in phase 1, with the westbound lanes closed and the eastbound lane traffic shifted to the eastbound lanes as shown in blue and green. Now here in phase 3, we will have a temporary full tunnel closure. This will be for the beam setting as discussed previously. The southbound tunnel chamber will be closed and motorists will be shifted to the north side of the tunnel with one lane being maintained open in each direction. Los Olas stays in the same configuration as previous phases. Now in MOT phase 4, on US 1, the opposite will take place and the northbound tunnel chamber will be closed and motorists will be shifted to the south tunnel where one lane in each direction will be maintained. But the change here is on Los Olas Boulevard, where as you can see, traffic is now running on the north side of the road in the blue and green, with the eastbound direction lanes closed. Thank you very much, Danielle. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. For the next slide, we have our senior project engineer, Martin Ryan. He will take over the anticipated activities for the next 3 to 6 months.
Thanks, Daniela. As Eric said, most of the construction in the next 3 to 6 months is going to take place in phases 1 and 2, and will include the work in the northern extension of the project. We're going to be doing demolition of the outside walls, constructing new piers on the outside and inside. There'll be beam setting and deck construction going on at that time. The impacts to traffic are going to be that US 1 for the entire project pretty much is that US 1 will be reduced from 2 lanes in each direction to 1 lane in each direction. So you're going to be encountering delays, especially during rush hour in the morning and in the afternoon. And on Los Olas Boulevard, when we shift traffic, it's going to be 1 lane each direction like it is now, but it's going to be shoved to one side of the roadway, and the on-street parking will be removed. That configuration also tends to slow down traffic through that area, but it should be noted that all the sidewalks will be open and there'll be a business access at all times during the project.
Thank you, Martin. To talk about safety and local coordination, we have our FDOT project manager, Heidi Cuevas.
Good evening. In regard to safety and local coordination, advanced warning and project signage will be placed throughout the construction corridor to alert and inform the traveling public. To ensure motorists, pedestrians, cyclists, and cruise safety, posted speed limits will be strictly enforced throughout construction. As far as local agency coordination, the project team will work closely with the City of Fort Lauderdale and other local agencies to ensure safety standards are met and impacts to the public are minimized in every way possible. As Marty mentioned before, business and pedestrian access will be maintained at all times. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Community outreach. For project updates, we do have a project-specific page. Any member of the public can visit www.d4fdot.com. I have included a direct link to the project-specific page where you can find project-specific information such as photos, renderings, scope of work, lane closures, e-tours, and additional information. So that website will be updated on a bi-weekly basis, so anyone accessing will have up-to-date information. As far as weekly lane closures, we also have a weekly press release that is disseminated every Friday. If you would like to receive that on a weekly basis, please feel free to email me directly, msilva@corradino.com, or you can also give me a call and I will include you verbally. My phone number is 786-441-3088. Also on a weekly basis, the project team and I will be sending out anticipated activities. That way everyone is aware of what is upcoming in regards to not only lane closures, but the type of work that will be performed throughout the corridor. If you'd like to be added to any of those distribution lists, both one or the other, feel free to email me or contact me directly. So at this time, I'd like to say thank you, and we would open up the floor to answer any questions that you all may have.
Well,
Danielle, I have a question.
Sure.
I'm sorry, Jim. I just want to say thank you, Daniela. That was an excellent presentation. Very well organized. The level of coordination among agencies is very impressive. And though we all get frustrated with lane closures and how long things take, it's very clear that a lot of thought and a lot of planning went into mapping this out all the way out to the communication element of it. So we thank you, we're grateful, and I'm sorry, Jim, I cut you off. You had a question.
Thank you, Colleen.
That's okay. I was just wondering, Danielle, if we could get a copy of that presentation so we could post it on the website, on the council's website. Would that be possible?
Sure. Yeah, I can go ahead and send this over. We will also be conducting additional an open house and a virtual public meeting next week. I was actually going to say this towards the end, but it's relevant. So in addition to tonight's meeting, we will be hosting an in-person open house at the Stranahan House Museum on Wednesday, August 18th from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. It will be an informal format, so no formal presentation will be given like the one tonight. However, if you do think of any questions from now until then and you feel more comfortable speaking it directly with the project team, you may do so. We will also have members from the design team readily available to answer questions or comments. In addition to the in-person one, we will have the virtual public meeting. The presentation will be very similar to the one that was conducted tonight. It's very similar information regarding maintenance of traffic, scope, and what we anticipate for the next few months. And that will be conducted in two separate meetings from the first one will be 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. And it will be a brief presentation with a question and answer section. And then at 6:30 p.m. will be the second portion. And anyone can register the QR code. If you hover your camera over it, it'll take you directly to the link, or you can copy the link that's on the screen. But like I mentioned,
Daniela,
the presentation will be similar. Yes.
Danielle, can you put the different links that you've shared tonight in the chat box? Both
Okay.
for the virtual meeting and then the one for the project specific page?
Yes, I will go ahead and do that. Yes. If all right, I will send out the flyer also. Colleen, if you're able to disseminate that on our behalf, or if you have a list, I'd be gladly to share the invitation flyer, which has a brief breakdown of what we also went over, and of course the meeting information.
Fantastic. And we'll shoot it out through our distribution list, a link or the file itself. That's fantastic. What an exciting project we have. Another question from Mr. James, and forgive me if I pronounce your last name incorrectly, Labrie or Labrie? James, would you like to ask your question?
Hey, Colleen, it's Labrie. Thank you very much. This is actually a question for Karen Warfel. Is she still on?
Yes, I am.
Hey, Karen, we've never met, but you were on several emails that I sent to the city regarding the Murphy Pipeline project and the way that rerouting of traffic occurred through the Poinsettia Heights neighborhood. And I would like to ask you, what is the city really going to do to control the cars that are going to find their own way around this potential logjam on Route 1?
I think in terms of DOT, and I'll let them talk about what they've come up with of their maintenance and traffic. But generally what we try to do is really ensure the signage is appropriate, telling people which way to go and which way they should be going. We can't stop people if they are aware of how to get around in a different way, but by really trying to focus the messaging in those message board signs, the detour signs, we try to get people to go the direct way. I know in your case, the issue was that those signage that was put in there was done incorrectly, as well as people cutting through in inappropriate ways. So I'm not sure if Public Works has been able to address that a little bit better now, but we do everything we can to try to encourage people to go the right direction.
But drivers are going to find the shortest way they can, and you're going to have closures on Route 1. So don't you anticipate that there'll be additional traffic on other streets like 3rd?
Yes, and that is where the detour is going. I don't know if the project team has any information handy about the detours and where the MOT is directing people.
Karen, that's correct. It will be detoured. Vehicular traffic will be detoured on 7th, Southeast 7th over to 3rd, and then northbound to Broward.
Right. So you're going to have cars going down 3rd into neighborhoods. And how are you going to control that? Or are you going to even try?
If I may add.
Can I just say something? So traffic has to go somewhere. We want to mitigate bypassing through neighborhoods to the degree we can. Residents will ignore, detour signs and find their way through. At the end of the day, there is going to be traffic on side streets, on corridors. It is being managed to the degree that it can be. I think the Poinsettia Heights situation was especially frustrating because of the length of time to get the repairs done. And that was a part of it. And also it was just smack dab in the middle of residential, right? So I think there are enough artery options around US 1 that will hopefully be a little bit better. But yeah, at the end of the day, there's going to be more traffic on other roads, right? I guess I call me Captain Obvious, right? I think that's an important point to make here for a project like this that's going to close down a street. And I'm sorry, the FDOT person that I interrupted, did you want to say something?
Nothing. You pretty much covered. There are alternate other streets as well, and the full closure is only a brief full closure, so hopefully the impacts will be less.
But what I'm saying is traffic will slow down, so drivers will find the quickest way they can, and they will avoid it. And that means they will go down other streets like Third. So I just hope that the city and the contractors who are on this project will do their very best to try to control the traffic that is going to be going through residential neighborhoods. That's what I'm asking.
Good point. Good point. Any other questions about this particular project? And Honorable Mayor, did you want to just talk in general or at a high level about tunnels, you know, more broadly, or are you okay to have just listened to the presentation tonight and not wishing to say anything else?
Thank you, Colleen. No, actually, I was just interested in hearing more about this project. Anything I can do to enhance my knowledge of this project is important. In fact, I think we learned something tonight that Broward Boulevard is going to have enhanced traffic monitoring, and hopefully we'll be able to see some signaling coordination on Broward Boulevard. But no, the other subject we're not ready to discuss yet. I think we'll be ready after the 45-day period has expired, and at that point we'll definitely be back to the council to get community feedback and education. So thank you, Colleen. But I just wanted to hear what the folks had to say about the Kinney Tunnel tonight.
Fantastic, fantastic. So James, you know, excellent point. And yeah, it's going to be, there are going to be some frustrations, no doubt about it. And I applaud your kind of prodding of the city to just make sure to manage to the degree that we can these, you know, the racing down the residential side streets. You know, we all deal with that to one degree or another. So thank you for raising that, and kudos to the entire team. As Michael Albetta put in the chat, kudos to Karen Warfel, the true master of transportation and mobility. Congratulations on a phenomenal presentation. So thank you, Michael, for writing it down for all of us. Any final questions before we say thank you and allow Daniela and her team to step aside?
If I can just add to Mr. Labree's comment too. So if neighborhoods that are downtown Civic Association and folks in that corridor, Flagler Village, have issues of cut through and speeding, what we have done in other neighborhoods is if we're adding speed humps or doing things to try to address that. So please reach out to either myself or Shelby or Daniela directly to let her know that something's happening, and then we can try to address it to the best we can.
Yes, at the end of the day, the community you're our eyes and ears. So we appreciate any type of feedback. And like I said, my phone number is there. That's my direct cell phone, and my email. You can get a hold of me either way.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you all very much. And we have a direct point of contact for specific neighborhood concerns once we get up and running. And Shelby is also providing her contact info as well. So we have multiple ways to conduct outreach if there are challenges in our neighborhood. So thank you all so much. Great presentation.
Thank you, everyone. And I hope to see you at the open house, if not at the virtual public meeting, if you wish to attend. Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I'm going to stop your share, Daniela.
Please, because it's not working on my end. Oh, here we go.
Okay. Okay.
There we go.
Okay, thank you. All right, so last two agenda items for this evening. Really excited to have you meet our next speaker. Scott Dudley is the Executive Director of Florida League of Mayors. He came to our board meeting and shared some really, really important insights about our challenges dealing with Tallahassee and kind of the state pushing for more control over local, municipal, what is our right, you know, what we should be allowed to enforce and manage. But also he's going to be coming back next month to provide a more detailed conversation about kind of productive advocacy, if you will. But I want to just give the floor over to Mr. Dudley, and we are honored to have you here tonight, sir, and have you speak a little bit about what to expect next month and anything else you'd like to add from what I just talked about in terms of the intro. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you for having me. That was a very interesting meeting so far. I've learned a lot about Broward County. So I'm Scott Dudley. I'm Director of Federal Affairs and Field Advocacy for the Florida League of Cities. I'm also the Executive Director of the Florida League of Mayors. I don't know if Mayor Trentalis is still on here, but do a lot of work with him and other mayors across the state. So what I'm here tonight to talk to you about is real briefly, just kind of give you a little preview of an effort that the league is building, trying to get more citizens involved in trying to weigh in on legislative issues. Colleen, you mentioned that it's the legislature stripping cities of power, but really what it's about is stripping you, the citizens, of your say in what's happening in your particular city. The more that the legislature preempts local government, what they're really doing is taking away the ability for you as citizens to have a say in what's going on in your neighborhood, whether it's deals with vacation rentals, whether it deals with tree trimming ordinances, whether it deals with the location of cell phone towers, whether it deals with the regulation of plastic bags. There's a whole host of issues that the legislature has deemed it appropriate for them. We don't think it's appropriate for them to weigh in on these issues and restrict your ability to have a say in what's going on in your neighborhood. The league is creating a program, basically a citizen outreach program. We're trying to get in front of a lot of neighborhood groups, Elks clubs, you name it, local chambers of commerce, et cetera, that we can work together to try to make sure that legislators know that they are being going to be held accountable for their votes in Tallahassee. All too often what you have is legislators saying, gosh, I had to vote for it because leadership made me. And they need to realize that they're not there to do what leadership was told to do, or that they're not there to do what leadership tells them to do, but they're there to do what you, the citizens who voted for them, have sent them to Tallahassee to do. I've got some statistics. I'll hit them real briefly. About 75% of citizens in random polling believe that local government, their local government, the city or the county, better reflects their needs and wants and desires and values than does the state government. That's across the board: Democrats, Republicans, Blacks, whites, Hispanics, young, old, you name it. So the legislature now has made this effort of taking away local voices, local decision making. The special interests are going to Tallahassee to get things done. They don't like decisions that are being made at the local level. And so they're going to the legislature and they're getting things taken care of at the statewide level instead of having discussions at the local municipal level or the county level, going to the city council meeting or the county commission meeting and having discussions about what works best in each community. Tampa is not the same as Tavares. Fort Lauderdale is not the same as Destin. They're just not the same communities. You don't want them to be the same. They have different wants, desires. And so we are putting together a program to try to get more citizens engaged. I can talk a little bit more about that, Colleen, at the next meeting. I do want to encourage you to the league. One thing I'll ask you to do now, and you can kind of get a flavor for it. We are asking individuals to text the word or words home rule. Just pretend you're sending a text to your whomever it is, your friend, your neighbor, whoever that you're texting them. Text the word home rule or words home rule to the phone number 50457. Very simple. You put in home rule, you plug in the numbers 50457. What that does is it will put you, they'll send you a link to ask you for your information. The league will keep you in the loop in terms of legislation as it's being filed, federal legislation as it's being considered. We've got the National Flood Insurance Program that's up for reconsideration in September. You've got the Infrastructure Legislation Act. You've got a whole bunch of federal as well as state legislation that's the state legislation will start to be filed, federal stuff that's happening. You can opt out at any time. We want to try to help you understand what's happening as it's happening instead of I had somebody describe it as we look up and a bus has run us over and we don't know what's happened. And what we want to do is make sure that you know that there's a bus coming around the corner and what that bus is. And so we're trying to help you become more informed, more educated, more engaged, and just kind of keep you in the loop. It's the words home rule to 50457. I see a question, primary lobbyist groups that are trying to take away our ability to regulate vacation rentals. Honestly, there's a vacation rental industry group. They've created a special interest group that has really put a lot of money into campaigns, and they are working the legislature hard. I just got back from a conference in Salt Lake City, Utah, where they discussed this, and they believe it or not, the vacation rental industry. And by the way, the League of Cities is not for or against vacation rentals. We believe that you all ought to be making the decision for your city. Some cities it's perfectly appropriate for, that's what the citizens want, and that's what's been decided on. And so that's the right way to do it. But the industry makes the argument that they are working closely with local governments. And I can assure you, that's not what I'm hearing from my cities, the 411 cities in the state of Florida. They're being run over by the Florida legislature, and it's basically happening nationwide. They're doing it all across the country. They think one size fits all. It doesn't. Florida is not Iowa. There's different reasons. You all have seen it yourselves in your neighborhoods, and so. I'm going to talk more at the next meeting about how we can work together to stop the attacks on local decision making and try to help educate you all, get you engaged, and get you energized on a regular basis. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I think that's a great kind of summary, Scott. And I think next month, and just in terms of what folks should expect as topics that you're going to cover next month, and maybe don't go through the entire list, but highlight a few of the pieces of legislation that are particularly concerning. Just name them, and then just talk a little bit more about September, and then we'll wait until then. We're going to be very excited to talk to you again in September.
So the legislature has taken away the authority of you as citizens in your neighborhoods to regulate smoking in parks, to regulate billboards and other commercial signage, to tree trimming, short-term rentals, plastic bags, cell phone towers. There's a whole host. Every year they file 20, 30 pieces of legislation that take away more, just bit by bit, cut away more and more of the say that you have about what's happening in your neighborhood. And it's getting to be really top-down decision-making where the certain industry groups, whether it's the state chamber or the Associated Industries of Florida or the Retail Federation or fill in the blank, it's a number of groups that are going to the legislature and saying, hey, we're not getting developers. A lot of developers are going to legislators in Tallahassee and saying, I don't like the decision that was made locally in terms of impact fees or in terms of the land use decisions that was made in my city. And so I want you, legislature, to step in and make decisions about what's going to happen in the city of Tampa with respect to land use. There was a bill this year that was passed dealing with home-based businesses. And we're not talking about accountants and lawyers or one person with a hairdresser chair in their office. This is literally any type of business that's allowed within a municipality that they can now allow. They have to allow those same businesses in your neighborhood. So it could be a welding shop, it could be a motor scooter rental place, it could be you name it, a massage parlor, a dance club, whatever it is. They have to allow the legislatures decided that they want to usurp your ability to have a say in what's happening in your neighborhood, and they have preempted local governments from having a say in that. They basically have to treat local governments have to treat the business basically. They have to treat all the regulations have to be. They can't regulate a home-based business differently than they would if there was no business in the residence. So basically, they're taking the lowest common denominator in terms of regulations, what they would allow in an industrial area, and they're allowing that within a residential area. Really, really bad for zoning. It essentially eviscerates zoning. So that's just one of the many examples of really, really bad stuff. I see a question, who do we text to? Home rule, you don't, it's just the word home rule. And then you type in for the phone number, who it's to is 50457. And what that does is that comes to me and you'll get a link back that will ask you for your email address, and we'll add you to the list, and we'll make sure that you're getting legislative updates, that you're getting talking points about the legislation. We have a team of folks that reviews the legislation, that lawyers, lobbyists, et cetera, that look at it and say, hey, this is what it's going to do to cities and to zoning or to land use decisions and all that. And we'll push out messages in terms of, hey, if you don't like this piece of legislation, here's who you need to send an email to, or here's who you can call, and basically kind of just help you educate you in real time about what's going on up here in the legislative process.
Okay, so Scott, I'm going to stop you there because we're over time tonight. It is so valuable and so important to have partners like the League looking out for our interests. And I think, a lot of this is us figuring out how to come together and operate more productively to get our voice heard more broadly, because we know we don't have the influence that we need to. So we're grateful, and we're definitely going to be looking forward to having a longer conversation with you in September. Appreciate it very much.
Cool. I'm excited about it. Thank you all for taking time to listen to me. I'll see you next month for sure.
Thank you, sir. And our last presenter tonight is Dennis. I do just want to acknowledge we have two representatives from Broward County Commissioner Tim Ryan's office, Eugene Bold and Maria Rodriguez. You guys are not going to speak tonight, I'm sorry, but we're going to invite you back in September as well, because here's the thing. We value our partnerships, and it's so important, especially these days, to collaborate and partner wherever possible. Broward County has a really wonderful resource guide, and I think a lot of resource that we may not be fully aware of within our city. Yep. So we look forward to having you both back and talking a little bit in detail about what you've got and the resources that are being provided through the county. So thank you very much for being with us tonight, and we look forward to seeing you.
Of course, we look forward as well.
Thank you, sir. Thank you both. All right, so with that, our last presenter for this evening is a wonderful board member, Mr. Dennis Ulmer, who's going to give us a brief overview of his attendance at the NUSA conference. Dennis, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you. Good evening. I attended the 47th annual Neighborhood USA NUSA conference that was hosted on Zoom from Fort Worth, Texas, May the 19th to the 22nd. The conference theme was steering neighborhoods forward. How appropriate for a conference from Fort Worth, Texas. First, I want to thank the Office of Neighborhood Support and the city for my scholarship to attend, and the great host, the city of Fort Worth, and the NUSA Board of Directors. The conference was very well done, even though it was virtual. There were many opportunities to share ideas with neighborhoods from throughout the country and in the various sessions you could participate in. You were given the opportunity to join the discussion with the session host by raising your hand, and the host would invite you into the discussion for a few minutes for everyone to see you and hear your thoughts and ideas. I participated in several in these occasions. In the session of Lessons Learned, Reinventing Policing in the 21st Century, I shared with the group how in Fort Lauderdale in District 3, this was an idea by Commissioner McKenzie and the police department, that you can have the roll call of the police officers at your home in your neighborhood, and your neighbors can come and observe and also get to know the police officers. The officials were very impressed. They said they had never heard of any city doing such a thing, and they were very impressed that the city of Fort Lauderdale was doing it, and they congratulated us for that.
Thank you.
As we waited for activities to begin, I would type in the chat things like move to Fort Lauderdale and throw away your snow shovels and snow blowers. Those are things you never need here. Fort Lauderdale and our neighborhoods are recognized in some awards too. George Havorka was recognized as the Who's Who in America Government Employee Award, and some of you here tonight appeared in his nomination video. Rio Vista received an award in the printed newsletter category, and the City Cares Project won 3rd place in the social neighborhood revitalization category. And our own Hal Barnes was recognized for his many years of service on the board. When you are a participant in a conference, you are an ambassador to the city and your neighborhood. I hope that I did a good job in representing the city of Fort Lauderdale. And there's lots of things to be learned in attending a conference like this. And I also want to say that it's not bricks and mortars that make a great city, it's people like all of you here tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dennis. As always, so articulate, so wonderful. And I don't know if folks are familiar with the NUSA conference, but it's a national conference of neighborhoods from around the country. And Hal and his team have received a number of awards over the years, and congratulations to Rio Vista. Did not know that. So appreciate it. And I think we got tickets to this conference thanks to Hal. So thank you, Hal Barnes.
One other thing, you can get information on the NUSA website. It's www.nusa.org.
Fantastic.
I hope I did a good job, Hal.
Did a fantastic job. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're almost done. We're almost done, guys. Yes, please share the love of Dennis in the chat. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Brucey. Thank you, Melinda. So our last point of business, I think I skipped over approval of the minutes. I'll go back and do that. So, but before we do that, I'm going to turn things over to our wonderful treasurer, Melinda Bowker, to do a brief recap, just because we haven't shown our numbers since June. I think it's a good idea now that it's August. So I've got the treasurer's report up. Melinda, if you want to briefly review, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Colleen. So board and membership, just a quick update from me. The last time you heard on the Treasury was the membership meeting on June 8th. And just briefly, with regards to our account balances, we've got $11,991 at our SunTrust checking account. We have $1,930 in our council PayPal account for a grand total of $13,922 rounding up. Just the minor activity since I last presented to you 2 months ago. We did have 2 additional members renew. That's the Galt Mile and Riverbend Civic. And we did have a couple minor expense payments paid out. And ultimately, we are looking at a total who have renewed as of this date of 45 members. So please remember, if you have not done so, to go ahead and send in your check or renew by PayPal, and I'll take any comments or questions. Okay. Oh, I think you're on mute, Colleen.
Questions from anyone? We never have questions from Melinda because she does such a fabulous job, but open it up for questions. Okay, thank you, Melinda.
Yes, I have a
you.
question if you can hear me. This is Dr. Pittman.
Yes.
Yes, I'm looking at the notes there. It says Riverbend. Is that referring to historic Dorsey Riverbend payment on June 28th?
That is yes, Dorsey Riverbend Civic.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes, sorry about that. It's a little abbreviated there.
This is Steve at Lauderdale Beach. I'm curious as to, I always get confused when the time period is and if we're paid up or not and whatnot. Can I see a log somewhere just to check? I forget about, what the time
I can definitely connect with you and give a quick look.
we are, but again,
Why, I'll definitely connect with you offline and we can, I see you've got it up here, Colleen.
yeah, I don't see Lauderdale Beach anywhere. It's not really alphabetic, I don't think.
Yeah, this is done by the date received.
There we are.
Oh, there it is.
We're good until, all right.
Yeah, Lauderdale Beach HOA.
I
Yep.
got it. Now I see how, okay, thanks. I'll remember that date.
Yeah.
Do it again.
Okay.
Thank you.
No worries. Thank you, Colleen.
Okay, and Dr. Pittman will amend this to correct the name to the correct neighborhood name.
Thank you for that.
Will do.
Okay, so last piece of business, which is, well, actually it was listed last, so we're not out of order. The last general meeting we had actually wasn't in June, it was in May. Am I correct? Did we have a June meeting? We had a June meeting, correct? So
Yes,
this
we did. We did.
Okay, so my apologies. This should read June, the June general meeting. So could I open up for any comments or edits to the general meeting notes from the June general meeting? And if no discussion, call for a motion to approve.
I move to approve.
Thank you, Luis.
And I will second.
Thank you, Jim.
With seconds. And I,
any opposed to approving the minutes? That's how we vote. We vote, we do the anti-vote, right? All right, so hearing no oppose, the minutes are approved.
Sure.
I'm sorry, did someone want to say something?
No.
Okay, great. So our next board meeting is the 23rd of August. We are maintaining virtual for board meetings. Our next general meeting is September 14th. We had hoped to go back to in-person this month. We were already talking about maybe going to in-person on the 14th of September. Given Dr. Rader tonight and given where we are, we may remain remote for September as well. We will certainly let you know. With that, I want to deeply thank all the speakers, all the presenters, all the fantastic presentations, and most importantly, all of you who took the time out of your day to be here with us tonight. We appreciate it. We hope you got some valuable information from the meeting this evening, and we look forward to seeing you in September and maybe in between for the police chief swearing in and the FDOT open house is occurring next week. All of those details will be shared out by email, and we'll also post it on our website along with the meeting notes, which should go up in the next few days. So with that, any last comments from anybody?
Colleen, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Mostly for the people. Has anybody confronted the way of doing or conducting an election via Zoom? If anybody has any ideas, to please let you know or something, because we're going to be having an election pretty soon, and we have no idea how we're going to do it via Zoom. And you realize now that voting, we have decided that it's better to say that who's opposing rather than who's voting yes, because it's the easy way to determine who's not in agreement. But
Madam Chair, this is Michael Alberta, if you get a minute.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, it's your privilege to appoint a nominating chair. You'll announce it. And then you'll put, you'll set anything that goes through the nominating chair, that anyone would like to see a nomination. We had, there are various other people that had elections on if people want to stay still in their seats, such as I'd like to stay in as a District 2 rep. And other people maybe would like to stay in their positions, but you need to first and foremost appoint a chair, a nominating chair. That's order of business. Okay, thank you.
Michael, with all due respect, I was talking about an election at the association level.
Oh, I do apologize. I thought maybe you were talking about the council. I apologize.
No. We'll
stand
cross
corrected.
that bridge when the bridge comes up to us. It's that we are basically in a nominating phase for our association, and we are really kind of like scratching our heads on how we're going to vote, how we can do a legitimate vote via Zoom if we cannot do it in person.
So I'll tell you what,
I wanted to pick people's brains.
Yeah,
Get together with me, and I'll tell you how it can be done.
Anytime.
I promise you.
There's a number of ways, and there's a number of ways to do it ethically, because that's the biggest concern, is that you can track the votes, that you have fair representation. And a lot of different associations have done it different ways electronically. I just saw in the chat, you can Zoom poll. That's a great idea. I hadn't even thought about that. Fantastic. Sailboat Bend, I think, contracted with an external provider for their election. So I do think, ask Michael. That's a great idea. I do want to close the meeting down because it's 8:16 p.m. But if anybody has any suggestions for Luis, for South Middle River Terrace or South Middle River Civic Association, we can certainly, share that, bring that into us, and we'll share it with Luis as well.
Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. All right, anyone else? We are going to say good night, if not. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you very
Good night.
Take care. Be safe.
Take care.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Colleen. Good
Thank
night.
you. Great job.
Great meeting, Colleen.
Who is that? Betty?
Brucey.
Brucey.
Yeah, very well done. It was excellent.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a great evening. Hi, Shelley. Betty, Shelley.
I was saying it too, but I didn't unmute, so now I am. It was a great meeting, so much information.
Yeah, I agree.
You done good, girl.
Jam-packed.
Take care, Betty.
Okay, love you guys.
Love you. Have a great
Bye.
evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye.